Hello. Um, First of all, I want to thank everybody who watched the Triumphs and the Agatha interview with Ross and were kind enough to stick with both of them, comment, give it a thumbs up, give them both a thumbs up, and subscribe. I was enormously encouraged by the support and also intrigued by the several helpful suggestions. So thank you all very much indeed. This is the alphabet trail, which is based on Wilson and Blackett's work on the British alphabet called Coelbren. That's Coelbren. And we've managed to trace it with its ancestors back to Egypt. And their list of supporting evidence appears on page 487 of the Trojan War of 650 BC, this famous book which anybody familiar with Ross's channel will know about, available through hieroglyphics, plug, and most important too. And Wilson and Blackett have done an enormous amount of work on substantiating this alphabet, and as well as on tracing the path of it. And they were the first to alert me to the traducing of Iolo Morganwg's name. Edward Williams, his real name was. He wrote poetry under the name of Iolo Morganwg. And it's absurd and unhelpful to level accusations of forgery at him when all he did was to do what Wilson and Blackett have done, which is to collate instances of the Coelbren alphabet. And he did his best against bad health to collate as much Welsh history as possible before it was lost, including and particularly the ciphers of the Coelbren alphabet. And I have to do this from notes because I tried to wing it and it was a disaster. So here we are, reading from some notes. At this distance in history, we are no more capable than the academics are of providing such forensic evidence as they seem to require of us. Actually, this doesn't matter because what constantly surprises me is not the lack of evidence, but just the sheer wealth of it. As long as we look in the right place. And it does require one to get off the beaten track, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. And by the way, on the subject of Coelbren in funny places, I thoroughly recommend Ross Broadstock's recent chat with Professor Lee Pennington on the subject of Coelbren inscriptions in America. It's another enormous piece of the puzzle falling into place. Right, back to Wilson and Blackett's list. Julius Caesar, oh, by the way, this is not intended to pull them down. I wish to substantiate wherever possible. If I haven't been able to substantiate yet, I just haven't been looking in the right place. Obviously, these men are meticulous in their evidence. Less meticulous, I'm sorry to say, in noting their sources and their references. However, that's what we're here to do. Julius Caesar described the ancient alphabet circa 55 BC and stated that it was similar to the Greek alphabet. Bob Morgan, and well done to Bob for this because I couldn't find it, he tracked this elusive comment down, and I'll read it. They, the Druids, are said to learn by heart a great number of verses. Accordingly, some remain in the course of training 20 years, nor do they regard it lawful to commit these to writing, though in almost all other matters, in their public and private transactions, they use Greek characters. Well, Greek, I thought, okay. I looked up the original Latin and it does indeed say Greek or Graecis, so that's no help. However, it is not the body blow we might think, so I'll come back to that. Ammianus, heavens above, Ammianus, Marcellinus, I don't know how he pronounces it, also described the British alphabet And he actually stated that the Greeks got their alphabet from the British. I have not yet tracked either of these statements down, but I shall keep trying. Marcellinus does mention an alphabet of 24 characters, but this is in the time of Emperor Commodus, who was born 161 AD and was emperor between 176 and 192. So the characters are obviously Latin. However, the Romans got their alphabet from the Etruscans, to whom we shall return. Once again, this is not the dead end it might appear. I'm going to show you the British Coelbren alphabet now, so you can see what we're talking about. Unfortunately, I haven't yet mastered Movie Maker. Otherwise, I might be able to do this a little bit more professionally without having to hold things up. But there you are. It's better than nothing. Another point they make is amazing. An alphabet is identically described in words matching the British records in the Nag Hammadi library. And the Nag Hammadi library, which I have here, this is my elderly copy, which I've had since 1989, is a collection of the Gnostic Gospels, which were found at a place in Egypt called Nag Hammadi, and are so well worth looking at to get a much more rounded and druidical, as opposed to Roman Catholic, view of Christianity. It's an outstanding claim that this alphabet should be identically described in words matching the British records in this book. I haven't found the exact place in the British records, and I beg anybody who's more familiar with them than I am to get in touch if they know where these are repeated, because that would be an outstanding piece of evidence. There are 3 codices in the Nag Hammadi library which could apply, however. The first is the Apocryphon of James, and I quote, "A secret book was revealed to me, James, and Peter by the Lord. I have written it in the Hebrew alphabet and sent it to you and you alone." This echoes what Caesar describes of the Druids and their secrecy. The modern Hebrew alphabet, and indeed the language, were both reconstructed about 150 years ago, after having fallen into disuse except for religious purposes in the 5th century AD. Ancient Hebrew, highlighted here in green, is much more like Coelbren to look at. The second codex in the Nag Hammadi library is Marseilles, which contains relevant material, and I quote, "On the mystical meaning of the letters of the alphabet and their relation both to the human soul and to the names of the gods and angels of the zodiacal realm and the other spheres of heaven," which should please Hugh Evans, whose book I thoroughly recommend, by the way. This fits in very well with the concept of the Arwen, which means muse or rains in Welsh, and the notion of the British language belonging to God. The third codex is the Gospel of Truth, in which we find the following. This is the knowledge of the living book, which he revealed to the eons at the end as his letters, revealing how they are not vowels, nor are they consonants, so that one might read them and think of something foolish, but rather that they are letters of the truth, which they alone speak who know them. Each letter is a complete thought, like a complete book. Since they are letters written by the unity, the Father having written them for the eons, in order that by means of his letters they should know the Father. This is so close to the concept of Jesus as the living Word of God as hardly to need mentioning. And finally, just as an illustration of the druidical nature of this Nag Hammadi library, we have the Gnostic poem, The Thunder Perfect Mind, which says, among many other splendid and thought-provoking paradoxes, I am the name of the sound and the sound of the name. I am the sign of the letter and the designation of the division. That's the Nag Hammadi library. I wish I knew the British records better. I don't. I shall have to get to learn them. Back to Wilson and Blackett's list and some more concrete evidence for the Coelbren alphabet. A large number of Cymric poets, they say, beginning with Dafydd ap Gwilym, who died in 1367, mentioned and described the ancient British alphabet up to 1485. The ciphers of the alphabet were preserved by Llewellyn Sion of Glamorgan circa 1550. Really, that ought to put paid to any charges of forgery. They're completely unfounded. In 1797, 1848 and 1906, it was noted that Coelbren was virtually identical with Etruscan. Somewhere between 1129 and 1151, Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote his History of the Kings of Britain, in which he says that a little after Brutus came to Britain, which was about 509 BC, I quote, "The language of the people, which had up to then been known as Trojan or Crooked Greek, was called British." The original Latin I show you here Trojana, Sive Curvum Greecum. It's a faithful translation. Another point, Wilson and Blackett have translated the Lemnos stone using Coelbren. Lemnian is related to Etruscan, and Wilson and Blackett have also translated many Etruscan inscriptions using Coelbren. Here is, in the second column, archaic Etruscan and its relation both to Greek and to classical Etruscan. Again, very Coelbren appearing. All we really have to do is turn 180 degrees and put Coelbren first, and then all the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Now, here's something which I found fascinating, but have not yet been able to substantiate. Wilson and Blackett say that the Coelbren alphabet appears on several of the baked tablets found at Nineveh by Austin Laird. These tablets date from 740 BC, and the same alphabet is to be found on ancient inscribed stones in the Aegean and Asia Minor, as well as all over Britain, anywhere from AD 200 up to as late as 1120, just before Geoffrey of Monmouth. Most of the clay tablets from Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh are written in cuneiform, however, and I haven't yet been able to find the ones inscribed in Coelbren. It's possible that these are being kept away from the public gaze, but I can't say for sure. Cuneiform was developed by the Sumerians and has a lot in common with Egyptian hieroglyphics, and we'll come back to them as well. Tiglath-Pileser III, if that's how he pronounces his name, deported the Hebrews to Armenia from Assyria around this time, 740 BC, and I wondered if there was any evidence of Coelbren in Armenia. Well, at this time, Armenia was known as Urartu, and I haven't yet discovered any inscription except in cuneiform. This could be a dead end, but cuneiform descends from a pictographic system, which I've put here, began to adopt elements of an alphabetic organisation as early as 3000 BC. Cuneiform reveals languages such as Sumerian, Assyrian and Luvian was spoken at Troy. There is another alphabet on Wilson and Blackett's alphabet trail called Raetic, and the Raetic alphabets, east and west, along with their, what you might call their linguistical cousins, are shown here. You can see the similarity among all these alphabets from Coelbren onwards. Raetia corresponds to modern northern Italy, southern Germany, eastern Switzerland, Slovenia and western Austria. It is documented by some 280 texts dating between the 5th and 1st centuries BC. This means that it is younger than Etruscan and can be taken as evidence of a spread of the Hebrews away to the north of Italy and beyond. It is what is called a Tyrsenian language, Tyrsenian, and so we're among the people of the Towers again. Fairly evident, I would say. In 1967, Howard Hayes Scullard linked Raetian to so-called Celtic languages, and it has features in common with Lemnian, Lemnos, of course, being the island where the Trojan Anatolian remnant gathered to join Brutus's fleet for Britain. Raetian also shows as does Etruscan, connections with the pre-Etruscan language spoken by the so-called Villanovans in Italy. Ancient Roman sources themselves attest that the Rhaetians are of Etruscan and therefore presumably of Villanovan origin. What this means is that the Hebrew remnant escaping the Anatolian famine and the aftermath of the Second Trojan War circa 650 BC were merely migrating to a place, Italy, where they knew they would be among friends and family. And recent DNA studies have proved the truth of this migration, which is very exciting. So once again, Herodotus was right. To return to Greek, Solon famously accused the Greeks of being children, having no history of their own to speak of. They were said by the historians of the time to have been given their alphabet by the Phoenicians in the person of Cadmus, and Cadmus is a British name, Cad or Gad meaning mighty, and there's a linguistical connection with Hugh Gaddon, Hugh the Mighty. Academia says that the Phoenicians, who are evidently Hebrews as well, had the basis of their alphabet in something called Proto-Sinaitic, which dated from about 800 BC. And Proto-Sinaitic descends directly from Egyptian. Proto-Sinaitic and Phoenician are shown here. The Proto-Sinaitic in pink and Phoenician in orange. This made me sit up, for God gave the Ten Commandments to Moses on Mount Sinai in about 1350 BC, and I've put here, it's not terribly professional of me, but who cares, if Sinai is not connected linguistically to the other name for Sumer, which is Shinar, S-H-I-N-A apostrophe A-R, then it jolly well ought to be. We have to remember that the modern Hebrew alphabet and the language were basically reinvented about 150 years ago. And so the ancient Egyptian alphabet, the ancient Hebrew alphabet is the one we're thinking of here, descended from the Phoenicians. And now we are firmly in hieroglyphics territory and the expulsion of the Hebrews who took their language with them. It is very important to keep in mind, very important, that Egyptian hieroglyphics are not an alphabet. They depend entirely on the language for their meaning and for the pictures to make sense. And that leads us to the only possible conclusion. If Welsh can be used to translate the wealth of Egyptian hieroglyphics, as Wilson and Blackett and Ross Broadstock have so spectacularly proved, then surely an ancestor of the Welsh language, itself the least changed over the millennia, must have been spoken in Egypt. I don't see how we can get away from that. And a thought, finally, to leave you with. How did Welsh get to Egypt in the first place? Yes, with the Hebrews, but where did they come from? It's a tall order, but I hope to answer that question as well in a future video. Well, thank you very much if you've stuck with me so far, and thank you for watching.